Hello and welcome to another edition of Another Book Review. This week I'll be reviewing The Anatomy of Desire by L.R. Dorn. I'll talk briefly about the authors, go into a spoiler-free overview of the plot, talk about what I liked about the book, what I didn't like about the book, who I'd recommend the book to, and finish off with what I will be reading for next time. L.R. Dorn is actually the pen name of two authors, both of whom are screenwriters or have screenwriting credits in film or television. This is the first novel, I believe, for both of them. One of them has more of a background in, I would say, kind of cable television. The other one has more of a background in graphic novels. But to my knowledge, both of them, this is their first work. They actually have a really pretty nice website if you want to check it out that I believe they made for this novel. But this novel, The Anatomy of Desire, is a little confusing to talk about just because it is the retelling of a famous novel called An American Tragedy, which came out in the early mid-1920s by Theodore Dreiser. Is considered kind of a great part of American literature. I've never read it, but it is on Time's 100 Best Novels list, and itself was based on an earlier murder trial that happened in the near the turn of the 20th century. So this is a retelling, a modern retelling of An American Tragedy. I had never read it going in, so it didn't really matter to me, but that's just something to be aware of if it's something you've read in the past. But what this is about is there is an influencer who I'd say is maybe a B-level or C-level influencer, health and wellness type of person, who is accused of murdering her girlfriend in order to be with her boyfriend, who is a much more famous influencer. And this book is really the trial to determine whether or not she is found guilty. This happens in modern day, I'd say, Northern California. And it is told in a style very similar to a true crime podcast. So there's a framing device with a documentarian who goes to the city in rural California to interview all the people involved, including the accused families, the victim's family, the boyfriend. So very reminiscent. It reminded me of, if you've ever read this or watched The Staircase, it reminded me very much of that, the Michael Peterson trial. So that or Serial or something similar. So it's kind of done in that way, which I thought was really interesting. And I think it fit the strengths of the skill set of both the authors, because I think it does have a nice flow to it. I think the characterization's done really, really well with relatively minimal dialogue, but you learn pretty quickly. You have some of the kind of stalwarts of true crime. You have an overzealous prosecutor. You have a town that may be biased towards certain alternative lifestyles. You have a jury that has its own nuances to it. So I thought that was all really done well. The voice acting, I listened to this on audiobook, and I listened to it in about 6 hours. It's relatively short. And the voice acting to me was the best part of it. I think all the voice actors in the main cast did a fantastic job of really getting the emotions out of these characters without being cloying. I thought it was well written, well edited, well acted. So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was done overall for what it is, very well done. If I had quibbles with it, they're relatively minor. I think the title is not very good. The Anatomy of Desire, in my opinion, doesn't really fit this at all. I think that to me is more related to if I was to write like a medical thriller of a love triangle between a doctor, a nurse, and a patient. That's the title I would use for The Anatomy of Desire. I don't think it fits these characters particularly well. I thought that there were parts of it, like all things, I think that where the time spent is well used. I do wish it was a little bit maybe longer and we had a little bit more of the background of the jurors. Really more of like the jurors' opinions, how they came to their decision ultimately, and more of them. I wish that part of it fell a little thin to me. I think they kind of build up one of the jurors. There's a little bit of foreshadowing that one of the jurors is maybe going to be more important than they ultimately are. And I was kind of bummed out a little bit about that we didn't have more time with the jurors. The other thing I can think of, there's one character who has quite a lot happen to her in a relatively short period of time that to me stretched the line of plausibility. There's mentions of a sexual assault at one point in the novel that felt a little gratuitous and unnecessary. I understand, I think, why it's done for that character, but given the character's background previous to that happening, I don't think it was necessary and came off as a little bit too much, in my opinion. And then I think there was one other thing I was going to mention about the novel. If you are someone who likes true crime, I think you'll like this a lot. I think there's some people who have a hard time with it just because people are real. These are real people going through the situations, and there's a little bit of voyeurism that goes along with that some people find uncomfortable. I think this is actually kind of a really cool way to get around that because these are fictional characters. This is still done in that same style, and I think you get kind of the best of that world without kind of feeling a little gross of watching over these people. I will say, if you're someone who needs characters to be likable, that may be difficult in this book. I found the main character and her boyfriend to both be really grating. I think they're done that way on purpose. But if you're someone who tends to recoil at any kind of people who are really deeply involved in what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of the Church of Positive Thinking. She uses a lot of vocabulary from that world to the point where it may grate on your nerves. It definitely did on mine. I think it's done that way on purpose. I think that gave the character a believability. That being said, I can see how that would be really annoying and hard to listen to given the length of the podcast. But I think the thing is relatively short, and I think that's done to give you insight into who that character is. That really the character, in my opinion, ultimately is kind of a facade. There's really nothing deeper than that mask that she wears, but I could see how that would turn some people off. So that is The Anatomy of Desire by L.R. Dorn. If you are into true crime podcasts and want something that's in that vein but a fictional account, I think this is actually really well done. I definitely recommend, if you are going to check it out, to listen to the voice recording because it's very, very well acted, in my opinion. So until next time, I'm not sure what I'm going to be reviewing next, but until next time, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'll leave my Twitter link below if you want to follow me on Twitter. Until next time, bye.